This video is sponsored by Bamboo Labs and their Bamboo A1 printer system. What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and as we approach the release of a new edition of everyone's favorite grimdark tabletop game, it's time to take a look at your accessories and make sure you're accessorizing properly. Today, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite accessories that I bring every time I play a game of Warhammer or Breachstorm or whatever it may be, and ways that a 3D printer can help you out. Now, the first thing is going to be measuring sticks. I'm a big proponent of precision measuring in tabletop games, and there's a couple ways that you can do this. The most common one are common measurements for deep strikes and auras effects like that. Obviously in Warhammer there are area denial zones where when you are bringing a unit in from reserve, you are not able to bring it in within a certain distance of a model on the tabletop. In the past, this has been 9 inches, but it is moving to 8 inches, and updating measurement sticks for those distances is going to be important. Now, I also like to carry around 6-inch measurement sticks. This is a very common movement characteristic in Warhammer 40k, so it allows you to pre-measure a lot of movement distances, as well as allowing you to measure things like 6-inch ingress moves. There's a lot of armies in the game. They're able to come in closer than that normal 8 or 9-inch deep strike, and being able to measure a closer distance is a huge deal. The other thing is the use of measurement sticks of different increments. So, for example, you can have measurement sticks between 3 and 8 inches, are some very common measurement distances, and that allows you, especially for things like engagement or charging, to measure very specifically whether or not you are within range to complete that movement. So, for example, if you have exactly a 7-inch stick, and a lot of times you'll be able to get these in increments all the way down the line of different sizes, you're going to be able to determine very conclusively whether you're between 6 and 8 inches away. Because in a lot of games that specific distance is hugely impactful, having a widget that's locked to that specific measurement, it makes it much easier to determine whether or not a charge, for example, is within range. So let's say I have a 7-inch stick and I want to determine if the charge that I'm about to embark on is going to be a 7 or an 8-inch charge. If I just put the stick down and I see that it doesn't touch both of the miniatures that I'm measuring between, we know that it is not within 7 inches, so I would likely need an 8-inch charge to be able to make that. Now, this video has been sponsored by Bamboo, and I created a lot of these measurement widgets on my Bamboo A1 printer. It actually did not take very long at all, and the great thing about this tool is the Bamboo Labs app, which has a whole library of user-created content on it, and that includes things like pre-built measuring sticks that are preset to specific distances. I found ones that were set to 6 and 8 inches, so when I was preparing myself for the new edition, I was able to print out measurement sticks that are going to be able to pre-measure ingress moves using those new measurements. That's pretty cool. And another thing I was able to do on the Bamboo Labs software is create proxy bases. Now, I'm a huge proponent of proxy bases. They're a precision measuring tool that's just the base of a miniature. This is incredibly important for determining whether or not you can fit into a position or pre-measuring your positions on the tabletop. So, for example, if I say I want to know if I move my model however far it moves, 5 inches forward, am I going to be within range to get the benefit of an aura? Or where do I have to position to be outside of a terrain feature but gaining line of sight to a particular enemy? Simply placing a proxy base down in that position and then doing all your pre-measurement allows you to make all those determinations without having to move the miniature at all, which is hugely relevant. Proxy bases like that are one of the most underused tools in a lot of games, and especially given how relevant and how common pre-measuring your movements and pre-measuring your placements are in a lot of these tabletop games, being able to do so with accuracy is hugely relevant. Now, I've even used the Bamboo Labs system to create a system of proxy bases that all fit into one another. I'm still working on this. This is a very rough prototype, but this one in particular is a 160 millimeter proxy base, so for like a defiler size unit, and it's able to fit between 80 and 100 millimeter bases inside it and snap together. Now, I have another version that's 130 mil base that has all the other base sizes in the game, at least for round bases, and I'll work on one that does oval bases as well. But fortunately, this is really easy to do in the Bamboo Labs software. This is the first time I was really diving into the creation tools that Bamboo makes available to people, and this was all done inside their own system, which is sick. Now, moving on from there are wound trackers and other counters. Being able to easily depict a numerical value on the tabletop is incredibly important, especially for things like accrued damage on a unit, and especially if you tend to, like me, play a lot of larger multi-wound models. I basically played nothing but Hive Tyrants and Greater Demon, so bringing these counters around is incredibly important. The other thing is also command point trackers. I know a lot of people use dice for command point trackers, but there is obviously the times where you like knock your dice off of a table, for example, and that command point tracker ends up getting removed. So I actually created myself a bunch of different counters to use for different values. I have a series of counters that are able to increment themselves in both 1s and 10s as you twist them. So you can use them for wound counters for larger models. And then I also constructed myself a little command point tracker with 2 counters fused together. I did print a couple of really small ones. I didn't necessarily like how the numbers picked up. It didn't resolve them super clearly. So I don't know if I'm going to end up using that, but I'm sure that there's another single-digit counter I could use for smaller models. I just haven't found one I liked yet. Now, in addition to that, and another measurement tool that's very common is a laser line measurer. There's a little bit of controversy within the 40K community right now about these laser line devices. Currently, I'm using a red target lock laser line from Army Painter. These are also available, or a similar tool is available in a lot of hardware stores as a laser line gauge, and I recommend that you get one of those ones. You can find laser measurement tools that are purpose-built for use in tabletop games. Oftentimes, these are green lasers. However, I actually recommend that you don't use them. The reason for that was an interview performed by an event organizer in the community, MC John, who actually talked to some physics experts who had performed a study which revealed that there was a high incidence of overpowered lasers sold to consumers and advertised as lower power levels. In the study, it was determined that green lasers had a much higher incidence of being overpowered and potentially harmful, to the point that their power level should require eye protection. However, red lasers had a lower chance of being misidentified this way. Anyone who plays 40K at a competitive level and has been in a hall with a lot of people using laser line tools knows that that's not necessarily just a throwaway safety line for liability. That just happens all the time. It's really easy with a stick laser line drawer to accidentally put it upside down and then shine yourself in the eyes, or shine someone else in the eyes, which is worse, especially if you and your opponent are both looking at the table and you accidentally blast this laser light directly up. It can actually cause permanent damage. So I recommend that you stick with red laser lines and the lower power watch battery style versions. That gives you the greatest chance of not getting one that is overpowered and potentially overpowered to an illegal level. I know that a lot of events are actually starting to ban certain colors of these laser line measurement tools for this exact reason. It can be a huge liability issue, which is certainly not something that we want to be introducing into our game stores or into our tournaments. But in any case, the low power red ones tend to be much safer than the higher powered green ones, so I would just stick with those ones if you are in the market for getting a laser line measurement tool. I'll drop a link to MC John's video in the video description. It was actually a really good study where he broke down exactly the issues that these laser line measurement tools can cause. Now, the last thing is tokens, and I actually think that as the new edition of Warhammer 40,000 starts to release, tokens are going to be incredibly important for standard gameplay. There are a lot more persistent effects in the game that are going to apply from turn to turn, and so having tokens available to indicate those are going to be incredibly impactful. A huge one is going to be Battle Shock, where having Battle Shock tokens is massively important because Battle Shock does have the potential to persist between different rounds. In addition to that, a lot of units are going to be benefiting from the hidden mechanic, and the hidden mechanic is going to be, I think, really easy to forget that you've explicitly not performed ranged attacks with a unit that is in terrain to then gain the benefit. I created in, again, the Bamboo Labs software, a nice little hidden token that has a little eyeball on it. It has a very easy system to import graphics into the software that it can then turn into a 3D object, and it creates text and everything, and it's able to even print that in multiple colors, and you can create tokens like this for all sorts of stuff. Enhancements, upgrades, and detachment abilities are going to be pretty varied on a lot of your units, and so being able to easily indicate those is going to be absolutely huge. Tokenation is another thing that I think a lot of gaming communities haven't necessarily yet embraced. I actually have a rule in my online system where if you have an effect that lasts for more than a phase, indicating it on the battlefield to your opponent is required. Whether that's a token or some sort of other indicator or a card or something that's on the table, and I just highly recommend that for the cleanliness of play, you utilize them in IRL events too. And you can print them all really easily on an FDM 3D printer. It's super quick. And you can even create them in the printer software in about 10 minutes, which is just awesome. But with that, those are all of the accessories that I've been preparing for my use in the new edition. Let me know down in the comment section if you have any accessories that you use that you absolutely swear by. Thanks to Bamboo Labs for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you for watching all the way to the end of the video. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.